Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Harmonious World. The track you're listening to now is Clair de Lune by Claude Debussy, which you're probably familiar with. It's performed by pianist Ben Raznick from his new album, Birds of a Feather. I was introduced to Ben virtually by Danae Xanthi-Vlase, who I interviewed a couple of months ago. And I'm delighted that she did introduce us because this album, Birds of a Feather, is simply beautiful. Some classic piano pieces, but also some really interesting original compositions. I hope you're enjoying listening to this beautiful Clair de Lune, but also that you enjoy listening to my conversation with Ben. Hi Ben, how you doing?
Good, nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
So I have really enjoyed listening to your podcast. I've been listening to different artists that you've been hosting, and it's great.
I know. I have been so fortunate to interview some amazing people,
Yeah.
and it's been great. I've loved it. And you know, of course, I've come to you, or at least I found you through Danae. Danae introduced us, and she was an amazing guest. It's really funny because it's just such a vague thing. It's just like, tell me what you're good at, tell me what you love doing, but it works.
Uh-huh. Well, the way that you are able to let your the people who come and just share about the projects, it's so interesting. I always learn something. So, and then I tend to listen to the projects and it's like, oh yeah, they were talking about that.
I love the fact that sometimes, I mean, often it's sort of general, and we talk about the recording process and the relationships between the other musicians and that sort of thing. But sometimes we get quite deep into the sort of musical stuff, the technical musicality, and I really like that because I know that some of my listeners are musicians and some aren't. So I think there's a bit something for everybody.
Nice.
Honestly, thank you for joining me. I'm really grateful for your time.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, and I love your album. This is just it's such a beautiful collection of some amazing pieces of classical music and then your own original compositions.
Yes, thank you. I thank you so much. I really have poured my heart and soul into this project, and I think it's just the most honest expression of who I am. My most influential pieces that have turned me into the pianist, musician, composer that I am today. So I'm really excited to share it, and thank you for your kind words.
No, that's all right. I mean, I'm hoping I'm going to start the podcast with the
Oh, okay.
Clair de Lune. Because
Oh,
no. Okay. Because I really like your version of Clair de Lune is because this is such a kind of, in inverted commas, simple piece of music, but it's just beautiful. And your performance of it, I don't know why, but it's almost like I could hear new things in it.
wow. Thank you. I live nearby a lake. And I would just, when I was preparing for these pieces for a lot of this music that I recorded, I would walk around that lake and I captured some incredible videos of the moon over the lake. And I was always so inspired by that. It seems so simple, but Clair de Lune means moonlight. And so I was always, when I was walking around that lake, I just always, I took in the serenity of the moment. And I like to think that that piece I really played to my peak abilities of just sharing the beauty of it in my own way that I could. I agree with you. It's very well known. So to
Yeah.
take it on to perform it brings up a lot of um, challenges because I wanted to do justice to it.
Yeah, of course. Of course. But and then you've got some Chopin, some Liszt, and the Scott Joplin. I love the Scott Joplin. So I really like the mixture you've got. So
Thank
how did
you.
you go about choosing which tracks to do?
Well, it all really started when I finished my last album, Memory Maze, which was 16 of my original compositions, and those all drew from different styles and um, genres of music that I had learned growing up playing the piano, and I realized that I wanted to really take a deeper look at how I was able to build that confidence and strength to write that album. And it really was from these pieces, this collection that I put together for Birds of a Feather, these impressionable pieces of music that influenced me so much. And I just knew when I had finished that project that these were the pieces I wanted to put together. And these 16 pieces were by the 10 different composers that I include. And for example, the Scott Joplin, he's just my absolute all-time favorite composer. I love his compositions. I love the stride piano with the syncopation. I just can't get enough of his music. So I knew he would be on the collection, and all of the other music that's on it just speaks to me. It was all music that has evoked really deep emotions and memories within my own life.
Right. And that, I think that comes across in your performances actually. So
Oh, nice.
that's, yeah. And I really, really like the cadenza that you do on the prelude to the Gershwin. That's lovely. That's really nice. It's like, is that Gershwin or is that Ben? You know?
Thank you. I worked really hard to mix it right in there. I always thought that Gershwin's, the prelude has the beginning, middle, and the end. The middle section is this nice change of pace. I always thought the middle section could go somewhere more further in my own eyes, and I thought, well, I can take it there. So I did do that, and I'm glad that you said that. I appreciate that.
So I thought here would be a great opportunity to actually put in some of this cadenza. So that's what you're listening to under this. And I'll just play a few more bars of this. It's just a beautiful cadenza. It adds something. Now, did you improvise it or did you compose it and write it down?
Yeah, it was sort of like a written improvisation. I spent some time playing around with a lot of ideas, and then I wrote those ideas down to make sure that recording it, I could play it with the way I wanted to play it, which included, multiple repeats and shifting the melody from the left hand to the right hand and crescendos and all the, stylistic performance details I wanted to include in it.
Right, because otherwise I guess you'd improvise one and then you'd go, oh no, I forgot to do whichever bit, you know.
Yeah, and it might go off in a direction that you got
Yeah.
to wrangle back in um, sometimes when you improvise. But yeah, I had a very sort of solid idea in mind for how I wanted it to be performed, and so I did write it down. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, very good. So when did you record these?
They're all recorded in Denver University's Hamilton Hall. So just down the street from me, I live in Denver, and it's in this beautiful little hall in the university. You can't these videos that I'm so proud of that are part of this project. You see how gorgeous the piano is. It's a 9 foot Hamburg Steinway and Sons piano. But what you actually don't see in the videos is that there's a beautiful organ on the second level with these huge pipes, and that what you can see, when you're watching the overhead angle, you can see the bird's eye view. That's from the balcony where sits this organ. But the hall is a
Oh,
small hall, but it's very grand. And that was one of the beautiful ways that we recorded it, was that we had the microphone set up in a way that you would be able to hear the piano, but you could also feel the the sensation of being in a hall. That was the goal of the recording style, was that you could feel like you're in the hall while you're listening to it. And yeah, the hall itself is beautiful. I was very fortunate to have different sessions in that hall to finish the whole project in the same location.
And how long ago was that?
Well, the recording was from 2017 to 2019, so it took about 2 years, over 4 different sessions. And then
Right.
I spent these last years preparing to release it. I was supposed to release it in May of 2020. I had a huge premiere show. I was so excited. I worked really hard for the whole show that was going to happen, this on the stage, and I had ideas about feathers and all these different things. And of course, that was
Yeah.
originally was postponed, and then it was canceled. And I mean, we all had to struggle in our own ways through the pandemic. But one of the beautiful things that happened was, I mean, with all struggles, there sometimes can be a silver lining. Was that through the pandemic, I worked to sort of reimagine what that premiere show would be, and I turned my album's premiere into a film, and I recorded it in my living room, and I shared the tidbits of things I wanted to chat with the audience as if it were the premiere show. And I'm really proud of that transition that I made. It was quite a challenge, but I'm proud of it. And I love having that as, or maybe sort of a little time capsule to look back at. Like, I recorded it in my living room because we were all at home. I mean, so
That's really good, because actually what I'm finding interesting is I started this podcast during lockdown, and I've already kind of forgotten a bit about how difficult that was. We literally, you couldn't go outside. You were allowed to go outside for kind of half an hour to exercise, and that was it. And heaven forbid you should meet anybody else, and because we didn't know how well it was going to, COVID was going to be transmitted between people and all of this stuff. And now that almost seems like a dream. And I think it's nice that we've got recordings, videos and things of people, people's live streams and all of those sort of things, to kind of remember how extreme this time in our lives was.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, we didn't know anything about this virus, and we also didn't have a vaccine for it. So,
No.
all you could really do was, try to follow the news or try to be updated on what we were discovering, but really just try to be as safe as possible. And that really was to be at home, for a lot of us. So, or if possible, for the people who were able to be at home. So yeah, that's amazing that you started the podcast. It really took a lot of extra energy. I mean, it was almost like you had a little extra time, but to dedicate it towards something was an additional task, because it was very emotional for us
Absolutely.
all to be living through it. So that is, very vivid, those memories.
Yeah, definitely. So what's next?
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm so excited that I've submitted this for Grammy consideration. So I'm just really excited to experience this season of how that all goes. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I'm just really proud of this project, because this is my first project to submit for Grammy consideration. So I'm just excited that's the point where I am in my career. What's next is that, I have a lot of ideas. I can't say anything concrete right now.
Sure.
I really don't know.
Right.
Just sharing my project, I suppose, is what I'm up to right now.
Yeah. And actually, isn't that what's exciting about when you've got a musical project that you kind of, it's forming, but it's not ready to be kind of put out into the world yet. And that's the exciting bit, and you want to talk about it, but you can't talk about it in detail. So it's
exciting, but it's sort of that step into vulnerability. It's like you put all this work into something, and then you share it, and it's sort of open for opinion. And I think that's just the challenging part of artistry.
Yeah.
Beautiful too. It's part of life, but
Yeah.
It brings up a lot of emotions to think about.
Yeah, it does. But isn't that better than kind of playing it safe all the time?
Totally. I'm right on board with you.
Go big or go home, really. But
Yes, that works. Yes,
that
that's
works. Yeah, yeah. I'm fascinated by the fact that you're in Denver. I've only been to Denver once. I've got really good friends who live in Fort Collins,
hmm
and I did a day sort of wandering around the city, and it's an amazing place. Am I right in thinking that there's a museum there to the to Molly Brown, who was the woman who
Yes.
survived Titanic and loads of other things, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
in her house, isn't it?
yeah, the museum is her home here in
Yeah,
Denver. It's a quite a cute little home. And at the time, from my experience touring through it, she was wealthy in that time
yeah,
period. So she had these amenities that didn't exist for most other families at that time. So it's really interesting to see the style that she lived in, the wallpaper and the furniture, very
absolutely.
ornate. It was, yeah, it's so interesting. That's a funny thing that you would
Yeah,
have learned of all the things of Denver. Yeah, it's a
absolutely.
landmark. Yeah.
It's the one thing that I really remember, and I'm a little bit not obsessed with Titanic, but that story. I mean, it is so tragic, and yet so much good came out of it in terms of ships now having all the right equipment on and the SOS thing and all of that sort of stuff. And I love the fact that you can have something that is so tragic, and yet without it, who knows what else might have happened.
Yeah.
So going to her house was fascinating.
Yeah, that's right in Capitol Hill, just right by the Capitol here in Denver.
Yeah,
So, it's a very cute neighborhood.
yeah, absolutely. And actually it wasn't what I expected, because I'd traveled around quite a lot in America that time, and it all seemed very modern and glass and concrete and stainless steel and all that sort of stuff. And then to go and visit this museum that was so quaint and sort of from 100 years ago was lovely. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about my memories of Denver, but it's still.
I'm glad to hear them. Yeah, I've lived in Denver for probably 10 years now. I'm from Boulder, but moving
Okay.
here has been a lot of fun too. I've discovered the city. I came to Denver as a kid to go to the Performing Arts Center typically, or the different museums here in town. But as an adult, it's been a different experience to live here, and it's a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
really do enjoy living in the city.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, well, well, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. It's been really, really interesting, and
Oh, thank
please
you.
do kind of keep me in touch with what else you're up to, and when you've got a new release out and that sort of thing. So I'd love
Okay,
to
I
interview you
will.
again. Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much, Hillary. I had a blast.
I apologise for the distraction there of talking about my memories of Denver, but it's such a beautiful city, and I so enjoyed being there. What you're listening to now is Balada de Buenos Aires by Ben Raznick, performed and composed by him, which is another of the tracks on Birds of a Feather. Do try and listen to that album if you can, it's lovely. But thank you for joining me once more on Harmonious World. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of Harmonious World. My name is Hilary Seabrook, and it's a great delight to bring this series of discussions with musicians and composers and writers and all sorts of people to you. Obviously, there's no point in having a podcast if people aren't listening, and I'm very grateful to my listeners for doing so. Thanks also to Joe English for composing and performing this new theme tune. So wherever you get your podcast, you can leave a review. You can share this with your friends and family, either as a link or on social media and that sort of thing. I'd be really grateful for that. Don't forget that you can subscribe now. There's a link wherever you get your podcasts. So have a great week, and please remember why I started this, which is just to try and make the world a little more harmonious. Thanks for listening to Harmonious World.